Hi, my name is Nathan. You're watching Nice at Dice, and today I am talking about the Century Trilogy, a series of games about basically mercantile activity in various historical eras. The first one is Century Spice Road, which is about trading spices on the Spice Road. Then you had Century Eastern Wonders, which is this one, which is about trading by ship. And then you have Century A New World, which is about trading in the New World. I have reviewed all three of those games individually, and there will be links in the description of this video to those videos if you want to go look at them. And in fact, if you haven't seen those videos or are not generally familiar with these three games, I would suggest you go familiarize yourself with these three games before you continue here, because in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 4 additional games that can be played by combining different ones of these games in the trilogy. And so you have Century from Sand to Sea, which combines Spice Road with Eastern Wonders, and you have Century East to West parts 1, 2, and 3, which combine Spice Road with A New World, Eastern Wonders with A New World, and then all 3 games together. So I'm going to be showing you basically what's involved in all these different combinations of the games, and then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to give you sort of my thoughts on the whole series overall. My thoughts on each of the 3 games in comparison to each other, my thoughts on the different combinations of the games, and what I see as the advantages or disadvantages to different ones. So let's get right into the explanation of things, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my thoughts. So what I have set up here is a game of Century from Sand to Sea, which is basically a combination of Century Spice Road and Century Eastern Wonders. As you can see, you have the board from Century Eastern Wonders set up, the only difference being that you have some of these blank tiles in here instead of there being an island on every tile. And you have some of the cards from Century Spice Road set up over here on the side. You also use fewer of the bonus tiles. You only use 3 types of the bonus tiles from Century Eastern Century Eastern Wonders. And you use the other side of the player boards. So this is the player board from Eastern Wonders. Looks like that. We're using the B side of it, which looks slightly different. So I'll go over all of that as I go through the explanation of the game. But basically what you're doing is essentially the same as Eastern Wonders, which is you're trying to get a certain combination of cubes so that you can buy these victory point tiles, and you're moving around the board to do that. But it has added on to it this aspect of the cards from Spice Road. So how does that work? Well, on your turn, you can do one of 4 actions. First action you can do is acquire a card. So you start out with the 2 starting cards that you have in Spice Road, but you can acquire one of these other cards, and that works much like in Spice Road. You can take the first card in the row for free, just goes into your hand, no problem, or you can place cubes on cards to take a later card in the row. Whatever card you take, you're then going to move cards down and bring out another card to replace it. You will notice that you only have 4 cards instead of 6, so you have fewer options, but it still works essentially the same way. You can also play a card, so there's a few different things that can happen from playing cards. Much like Spice Road, you can play a card that just shows some cubes to get those cubes from the supply. You can play a card with these kind of symbols to upgrade some cubes. You can play a card like this to exchange this cube for those cubes. And that's basically how that works. Now, as you play these cards, it is important to note that you're going to put them face up to the left of your player board. That's important. So you're going to have some cards in your hand, and you're going to be putting cards face up to the left of your player board. And that's important for the third action, which is moving. So the way moving works is a little different than in Eastern Wonders. You can always move to any adjacent island or further, but for each movement, including your first movement, you have to pay a card. You can pay a card from your hand, so you put it in a discard pile on the right side of your player board, or you can pay cards from the left of your player board. So I could, for example, pay like so and move 2 spaces to go here, for example. Now, just like in Eastern Wonders, if I stop on a spot where there's another player, I'm going to have to pay that player a cube. But that's basically how moving works. So you're using your cards to move instead of paying cubes to move farther than 1 space. Now, once you get to a spot, you can either claim one of these victory point tokens if you move to a port and you have the cubes that you need, or if you just go to a market, you can build a outpost there. So you can take one of these outposts, put it there. The first outpost does not cost anything. If you are the second person to get there and you want to build an outpost, you have to pay 1 cube. If you're the third person, you have to pay 2 cubes, just like in Eastern Wonders. However, because you're playing with the reverse side of the player board, you're going to notice that some things are different. So this is the side that you use in Eastern Wonders. This is the side that you use in From Sand to Sea. And so one of the things you'll notice is that there are fewer spots on here for outposts, which means that you have 4 less outposts than you do in the other game. And it means that from the very beginning, the first outpost you take off of this board is going to reveal a point that you can get at the end of the game, whereas over here, the first spot in each row was blank. So there is that. You'll be getting points more quickly once you start putting outposts out. Also, you'll notice that in the base game, when you clear a column, you get a bonus tile. From Sand to Sea, when you clear a column, the first column gives you one of these cards for free. You don't have to pay for it. You can take any one you like. The second column gives you either a card or a bonus tile. And again, you're not playing with all the bonus tiles. You're playing with the ones that give you points. You're playing with the ones that give you more movement. And you're playing with the ones that expand your cargo hold. But that's basically the differences. So you're going to probably end up with more points from these because you don't have those 4 blank spaces before you get to ones that'll give you points. And you're going to be getting those cards, which you can then play for their effects, giving you goods, upgrading your goods, trading goods, and so forth. And then, of course, the fourth action you can take is to rest, which just lets you pick up all of your cards. One's on the left of your board, one's on the right of your board. All cards that you've used for anything you can pick up, put them back in your hand. And that lets you keep moving your boat around. So that's basically how the game works. That's how it differs from the basic Eastern Wonders or Spice Road. Anything I didn't touch on, you can assume is the same as in Eastern Wonders or Spice Road. So what we're looking at here is Century From East to West Part 1, which basically combines Century Spice Road with Century A New World. As you can see, it looks a lot like Century A New World, but we do have the trade cards down here from Century Spice Road. So I'll explain how this integrates into the rest of the game and kind of gloss over anything that's the same. So I'm assuming you know how Century A New World works and how Century Spice Road works, and you can always go back and see my reviews for those games if you don't. So what you have going on is you have these 2 boards, this bottom half of the board, that's different. And so this replaces the locations that would normally be here, which is where you could get some more cubes or trade one type of cube for another. And so instead you have these. So these new locations do something different. So what these locations do is you can send a worker to any one of these bottom locations to interact with the card underneath that location. So for example, you can send someone here and you can just do this action. So you could trade 1 green for a red and 4 yellows if you want. And then this card would get discarded next to your player board. So it's important to keep that there so you know that it was used, but you are not going to touch it again for the rest of the game. Then these cards are going to slide over like they would in Spice Road, and another one's going to come out. You can send people over to any of these and get those cards. As you can see, perhaps, This requires 1 worker, 2 workers, 3 workers. So the cards that came out most recently take more workers to collect, but you can always do that. And as you send people out to these different locations, you can get the other option is, instead of just using the action and then discarding it, instead, without doing the action, you can take it and put it under your player board. And this is called adding it to your route. And the reason you want to add cards to your route is once you have some cards in your route, you can do some different things with them. So I'll give you an example. All right, here's an example. Okay, so let's say we get those cards in our route. And of course, as you take cards from here, these cards slide over. You get new cards coming out. Okay. So now, once you have a route, you can, on your turn, instead of sending workers to the board, you can send workers to the route. The number of workers you have to send here is at least 1 worker, plus 1 worker for each route to the left of that space that has no workers on it. So to go here is just 1 worker. To go here, you would need 1 worker if this guy was already here. But if that guy wasn't already there, you would need a 2nd worker here because you have an empty spot over here. If you wanted to go here and there was no workers on any of the other spots, you'd have to go like that. Okay. Another thing that you can do over here, and when you go there, you just do the action. It's that simple. But basically, you've reserved these actions for yourself. The other 2 spots here, if you send workers, a couple of workers to this spot, then you get to wipe all 4 of these. They just go to the bottom of this deck, and you bring out 4 new ones. If you send a worker, and when you do that, you get to take another turn immediately. Okay. If you send a worker to this spot, you get 1 yellow cube for your troubles, and you get to swap the order of 2 of these cards. So let's say this is actually a pretty good order, but let's say they were, you know, something like this. You could swap these 2 cards around. Okay. So now once you have some cards here and you have them in an order that you like, you can do something like this, right? For 1 worker, you can go, actually, yeah, this would be a good order. So let's say we put them in that order. You could send 1 worker here. That'll get you 3 yellow cubes. You can send 1 worker here. Now, only 1 because this spot is already filled. Okay, and that lets you trade 3 cubes. You have actually enough cubes you can do it twice, so you can trade 6 cubes for 2 brown cubes. And then you can send 1 worker over here, and he'll let you trade your 2 brown cubes for 2 greens and 6 yellows. So there you go. You have a nice little combo there. And then when you rest, you bring back all your workers and start all over again. And you see now I've got all these yellow cubes. I could probably send 2 workers here and go ahead and trade 6 of these yellow cubes for 2 brown cubes. And now I've got a nice little engine going. I can generate brown cubes or green cubes or just a whole bunch of yellow cubes. If that's what I need, whatever I need, I can generate some things there. So that's the purpose of this. The other reason, or the other thing that has changed is we have added this new bonus tile, which gives you 2 points for every 2 cards. Those count these cards and any cards in your discard. So using, just even using the cards down here and discarding them will help you towards fulfilling this bonus tile. So there's that. And then you'll notice these exploration tiles, which would normally be on the locations down on this part of the board, don't have anywhere to go, so they just go on the side of the board. And then anytime you get a point card like this, that would give you one of those exploration tiles, you just pick any one from the side of the board, and you get those benefits. But you don't have to unlock these locations like by taking these off like you would in normal Century A New World. So that's basically it. Those are all the differences, and that's how you combine Century Spice Road with Century A New World. This is Century from East to West, Part 2, which combines Eastern Wonders and A New World. So as you can see, you have basically the board from A New World, but you also have a little mini version of the board from Eastern Wonders, and you're going to be playing on both of them. So again, I'm assuming you know how to play Eastern Wonders and A New World, and I'm just going to explain how the two games are integrated. So again, you're trying to get the point cards from up here, but you'll notice that at the fort locations, they no longer have the bonus tiles there. So when you go to a fort location to get a card, you don't also get a bonus tile. You'll also notice that the player board looks different. So this is the back side of the normal player board. I'll show you one that I'm not using. So here's the front side of the player board. On the back side, you have a few things that are different. One is you have a spot for 4 bonus tiles instead of just 3. And you have this little grid, which looks much like the player boards from Eastern Wonders. So you're going to put your outposts on the grid like you would in Eastern Wonders. And what you're going to be doing is over here, you're going to be moving your boat around. You're going to be trading, you're going to be building trade outposts, and you're going to be trading cubes, one kind for another. And as you put your outposts down here, they're coming off of this board. They're going to be coming off of these spots that have numbers, so those are points that you'll get at the end of the game. And when you clear a column, you'll get a bonus tile. And the bonus tiles are here, so there'll always be 4 you can choose from, and then underneath those are more. So that's how you get the bonus tiles in this combination of the games, different from how you do it in just straight New World. And how do you move stuff around over here? Well, it's basically what you might expect from a combination of Eastern Wonders and New World, which is that there are locations on this board that you can send your workers to in order to make stuff happen over here. So there are essentially 5 spots over in this corner of the board that interact with this. So one of the spots is this spot here. You just send 2 of your workers there, and that lets you move your boat 1 spot. So you could move from here, for example, to there. You could, if you like, spend 3 workers and send them over to this spot, and then you can move your boat 2 spots. Or once this spot has opened up because this has been removed, you can actually send 4 workers over there and move your boat to anywhere on the board you like. So that's how that works. After you have moved your boat wherever it stops, it's much like in Eastern Wonders. If you stop on a spot with other players, you have to pay them cubes. If you stop on a spot where you can do some trading, you can optionally spend some cubes to build one of your outposts there. Okay? If you're the first person building an outpost, you don't have to spend any cubes. If you are the second or third person building an outpost there, then you will have to spend cubes. But once you have an outpost there, or not, you don't have to build the outpost in this game. In any case, whether or not you have an outpost there, you can then do the trade action. So like here, trading 1 brown for 2 green. Now, since building outposts is optional, in order to be able to do this, it might make you wonder, well, then what's the point of building the outpost? Well, the point is, if you have an outpost here, you can send 2 workers to this location. And this location lets you do the trade action of any tile where you have an outpost. So now your boat could be sitting all the way over here, and you could be doing this trade action because of your outpost there. You can also send 1 worker to this spot here, and that lets you do the trade action of the spot where your boat is. So if you have your boat parked on a good spot, you can do that repeatedly by just sending workers here. That's basically the differences. So you have this here, you have new spots that let you move your boat around here, you're building outposts or not as you see fit. You can send people here to do the trade actions of any spot where there's an outpost or the trade action of the spot where your boat is. Instead of getting the bonus tiles by going to the forts. You're getting the bonus tiles by clearing columns on your player board. And that is how the game works. Those are all the differences. Otherwise, it works much like you would expect from a combination of Eastern Wonders and A New World. All right, so this is Century from East to West Part 3, which combines all 3 games. And as you can see, there's quite a lot going on here. However, having already explained how to do all the other combinations of the games, I can explain this pretty simply because it is not too different from anything I've already explained. As you can see, you have the normal board here that you generally have, spaces where you can generate goods of each type. You can upgrade your goods here, generate more goods here. You have this board which lets you trade goods, one kind for another kind. You have this board which has all the things that come in part 2, where you're just combining Eastern Wonders with A New World, so that these spots let you move your boat around, let you build those outposts, let you do those merchant actions or market actions for where your outposts are or where your boat is. That's what this is all about. And again, you're trying to clear these columns, and as you clear them, you can take bonus tiles from here. And in addition to that, you have these 2 boards, which are very similar to the 2 boards that are used in East to West Part 1, which combines Spice Road with A New World. But there is one important difference, or perhaps 2 important differences. The one important difference, the first one is when you go, when you send a worker to one of these spots where you have a card, you can only use the option where you do the action on the card and then you discard it next to your player board. And then you move things over and replace it. So in other words, you cannot claim these cards and build a route like you can in the other combination of just the 2 games. However, there's also, and you can't see it too well because it's way up in the corner here, but this board is slightly different in that it has 4 spots for these bonus tokens. And so what this is about is every 4 cards that you have over here next to your player board, for every 4th one you get to take one of these for no additional effort. So that's a different thing. You will notice that some of these are marked with a 3. So there's some of these bonus tokens that are reserved specifically for this version of things when you're combining all 3 games. And basically what they all have in common is they give you more points, but they have more stringent requirements for those points. Like this one requires, it gives you 5 points for each set of these 3 icons, instead of most of them give you 3 points for a set of 2 icons. So that's what's different with that. And that's basically it. You're still trying to get the right combination of cubes of different colors to go to the forts, to buy the points, the point cards, which still works the same. And much of the strategy overall is the same. It's just you have all these spots you can go to. You can also go and do the actions on these cards. You can also move your boat around and do the actions on the islands. And that is basically how Century East to West Part 3 works. All right, well, hopefully that gives you a good idea of what's involved in all of these different combinations of the games. And I will say, I do think it's very cool that the designer and the publisher came up with all these different combinations of the game. So essentially by buying 3 games, you get effectively 7 variants that you can play. And another thing I want to mention is that the game comes with this really nice little plastic cups to hold the different colored cubes. Each of the 3 games comes with a set of those cups. If you are, like me, willing to take 2 sets of cups aside, and I just store them and I use them with other games. But if you're willing to remove 2 sets of cups, all the other components, including 1 set of cups, will fit very tightly but they will fit in one of the game's boxes. So just all 3 games will fit in this box. So I think that's pretty cool. That's what I've done. I know some people like to keep each game individually in its own box, and it is cool too. I can't really show you because I only have the one box now, but it is cool how you can line up the 3 boxes, and they create the covers of each box together creates a nice panoramic picture, so that's cool too. But for my personal preferences, I like consolidating my games into as small a space as possible and be efficient in that way. And so I think that's just kind of a neat aspect of this trilogy of games, is that if you have all 3 of them, you can essentially fit 7 games in one relatively small box. So there's that. Let's talk about the individual games, starting with the 3 main games. And I've already done reviews of these, so I'm not going to retread those reviews too much, but just kind of highlight the differences between them and why I think what some of the pros and cons are. So Century the Spice Road is very simple. It's all about that hand management, building a sort of light and very flexible engine is your goal. I think it is the easiest game to explain. It's the easiest game to set up, teach. It's the easiest game to kind of understand the general gist of what the rules are, but I think it's kind of the most difficult game to really grasp what do I need to do in order to accomplish my goal. It's kind of hard to understand what cards I need to acquire to add to my hand so that I can create those nice combos of being able to efficiently exchange one type of cube for another in order to get to the end result that I need. And then recognize that the end result I am trying to get is going to shift from round to round. So I think in that sense it's maybe the more difficult of the games, but it is definitely fairly approachable in that it's really easy to learn the basics of and to be sitting there and playing it. It's just going to take some repeated plays, a certain level of mastery before you really understand, like, okay, this is what I need to do. These are to understand what moves are good, not just what moves you can do. So those are kind of my thoughts on it. I like engine building, and I think it's really the only one of these 3 games that really emphasizes any sort of engine building. The other games are more opportunistic in what you're doing. You're just kind of jumping at opportunities as you see them, whereas this, you're kind of building up this engine of, like, I'm going to be able to have these cards in my hands, so I'm going to be able to play this one to do this, and then I'll play this one to do that, and then I'll follow up with this one, and that'll get me where I need to be. So those are kind of my overall thoughts on that game. Century Eastern Wonder has that board that you set up with the different islands and you move your boat around, and honestly that's quite fun. I like moving the boat around, putting those trading outposts out on the different islands. There's just a tactile element to all of that that's very fun, and it feels very rewarding. I like how you have to kind of judge not just which island do I need to go to in order to get an action that's beneficial to me, but you also have to see, well, where is that island in comparison to where I am, and where is it in comparison to where I want to go next. And so those elements of that sort of the layout of the board sort of manipulates what decisions you might make, because you might have this one that is like, well, that would be a perfect action to be able to trade these cubes for those cubes, but it's so far out of the way, maybe it'd be better for me to go over here and do this, slightly less efficient, but then I'll be closer to my next thing that I need to do, and things like that. So that's interesting. It also is the first one that kind of adds this other element of, like, not only are you exchanging cubes to get what you need to get your victory points, but as you put out outposts, you're clearing those columns, which unlocks those bonus tiles, which you then get, and they will either get you more points or kind of upgrade your ship, so to speak, and so forth. And so it's the first one where you're kind of like balancing 2 things. You're like, okay, I got to get the cubes that I need to get the points, but along the way I'm also trying to unlock these other things that will kind of upgrade my abilities. So that's pretty cool. Century: A New World is all about worker placement. It's a very I'd say it's a very light worker placement game. It's not overly complex for a worker placement game. It's not overly mean for a worker placement game. I like how you can put workers out at a spot where someone already has workers. You just have to send one more worker than they had. And that bumps them out, which is good for them because, like, hey, they got their workers back and now they can send them somewhere else. So it's kind of a light, friendly worker placement game, I would say. It is definitely the most complex of the three games because you have the worker placement element, you have the element of exchanging cubes for cubes to get the right cubes to get those points, but then you also have those bonus tiles that you're getting basically every time you get a point card, you're getting a bonus tile, and then those bonus tiles dictate what symbols you're looking for, and so you're trying to get those symbols. You're opening up other spots on the board. You're getting these things that like upgrade you, so you can go to certain places for fewer workers, or you get extra perks for going to certain places. So there's definitely the most going on out of the three in that one. But I do like worker placement. Not quite as much as I like engine building, but it is a really cool mechanic that I enjoy. So I like it. I like, I like all three of them. I think if you've never played any of them and you're kind of unsure, I mean, just by listening to my descriptions of them, that might tell you what game is right for you. But if you're still kind of on the fence, I'd say my favorite out of the three is probably A New World. I really like the worker placement in it. It's not an overly complex game, but it's got enough going on to keep me interested for sure. But if it sounds like that game has maybe a little too much going on for you, if you'd like to start out with something simpler, well, Spice Road is definitely the simplest to learn. It's just going to take the longest to really master, what exactly you need to be doing to play well. So that's kind of the three of them. Now, once you start adding in these other combinations, that gets a little more interesting. You have From Sand to Sea, which combines Spice Road with Eastern Wonders. So you have the cards from Spice Road, and you have the moving the boat around from Eastern Wonders. And I find that with that particular combination, it's not especially rewarding. Like, since I have both games, if I was playing with the maximum number of players, which is 4 for Eastern Wonders, I might go ahead and throw in the cards from Spice Road, mix that up, just because you're going to be fighting over different locations on the islands quite a bit with 4 players, and so having those cards on the side that you can also use to get the the trades that you want, trading this cube for that cube, that could maybe loosen things up a little bit, make the game not feel quite so claustrophobic. But unless you're playing with the maximum number of players, I don't see where it really is necessary. And it almost feels just kind of like now you've added this whole other route. Like, I've played a game combining the two where I pretty much just messed with the cards the whole time. I paid little attention to where my boat was, where I was going with it, what I was doing with the boat. I just did what I needed to do with the cards. And that feels just kind of like a waste. Like, well, at that point, why don't we just play Spice Road and just use the cards? So I think it's pretty much, it's a game that it's a combination that you can overlook unless you are playing Eastern Wonders and you have the maximum number of players. It's a nice little thing to add in to kind of open things up a little bit. But otherwise, I think you can probably ignore that combination. From East to West Part 1, which combines Spice Road with A New World, the thing that I really like about that combination is how you can take those cards and add them to your route, and you can build your own trade route. And now you have those cards there that you're managing. It's important what order they're in, because you can create better combos if you have them in the right order. You send your workers there and you get the benefits of having you get whatever action is on that card. And if you want to send them to a card farther down the line, you have to send more workers unless you've already filled in the cards prior. So it kind of really, it's thematic because it makes me feel like, okay, I can move from one spot to the next down this trade route and I get benefits as I go, or I can skip ahead to a stop farther down the trade route, but I'll have to expend more resources to do that. So I feel like it's somewhat thematic, which is cool, but it's also, just kind of neat. It adds a little bit of that engine building from Spice Road, which I like, to a new world. And it doesn't make things overly complicated. It's still pretty straightforward. You still have most of the basic mechanisms from a new world. So yeah, I like that combination a lot. Part 2 combines a new world with Eastern Wonders, and that's interesting. I'm not as excited about that, but I will say I like how when you combine those two, you now make it's now like optional to put those trading outposts on islands. You don't have to have a trading outpost there to do, the market action on that island. But putting the outpost there opens up the possibility that you can now send a worker to that spot on the New World board, where it lets you do the market action of any island where you have an outpost. I don't know. To me, that just feels really, again, it feels thematic, because it's like if I'm establishing a trade empire in the West Indies or whatever, I'm putting these outposts there because these outposts should help me. Like, they should help me make money while I'm not physically there. It feels like that's the point of an outpost. That's not my headquarters. I'm not there overseeing things personally, but like their outpost is there. I have employees there doing activities to generate profit, to generate trade, without me being present. And so I feel like that particular mechanism, it creates that sense of, for me, it creates the sense of that for me. And so I think that's pretty cool. It's very thematic. And it's also just from a gameplay perspective, it feels kind of cool. Like, you're putting those out there and there's no reason you have to put them out there right away, but you're just kind of building like this trade network that you can cash in on later by, you can say, well, you can move your boat around a bunch in the beginning, and then you can say, all right, I'm just going to let my boat sit, and I'm just going to send guys to that spot that lets me do whatever action from any of those islands where I have outposts. So all in all, I think it's really cool. Now, part 3, where you combine all 3 games. So basically, that has all the perks of combining a new world with Eastern Wonders, but then it also adds in the cards from Spice Road, but without the trade route that you get from just combining a new world with Spice Road. And I guess they left out the trade route aspect because it just would have been maybe like one too many things going on. But I feel like without the trade route aspect, there's not much gained by adding the cards from Spice Road to everything else. Okay? The trade route aspect is cool, but without that, it's kind of like, just leave those cards out. I don't think they add anything, and they just make things overly complicated. So I feel like combining all 3 games is kind of a waste. I wouldn't bother with that. And like I said, not super keen on combining Spice Road with Eastern Wonders unless you have 4 players. But any of the other combinations, so specifically combining a new world with Eastern Wonders or a new world with Spice Road, either one of those is really cool. It just kind of depends on what you want to add to it. But they both sort of add a little bit of a feeling of engine building. They both add a little bit more thematically, I think. Interestingly, I feel like either one of those combinations is more thematic than Spice Road alone or Eastern Wonders alone. Like, what they add, like building the trade route and then having those outposts work the way they do in the combination, just feels more thematic to me than the way Spice Road or Eastern Wonders works on their own. So I think that's kind of my favorite option, is to play either the part 1 that combines Eastern Wonders with a new world. No, I'm sorry, that's part 2. But yeah, either that. So basically, play a new world and combine it with either Spice Road or Eastern Wonders. Either one of those 2 options is kind of my favorite. I could go for either. And any of the 3 games on its own is fine too. I like any of them. But yeah, I think my ideal sweet spot is a new world with either Eastern Wonders or Spice Road. So those are my thoughts on the Century series. Oftentimes when I compare games, I'm thinking about which one I'm going to keep, which one I'm going to let go. But again, all three of them fit in one box, which means that is great value to me when it comes to shelf space. I don't even have to think about getting rid of any of them because I can keep all three of them in one box. And it also means that together, these three games are probably going to stay in my collection for quite a while, because any other game I might think about giving their spot on the shelf to basically has to be better than three games on its own. So yeah, definitely recommend any of these games. And if you pick up all three, that's cool. It gives you some really cool options to play them each on their own or in combination. Yeah, definitely all around big recommendation for me for the Century Trilogy. Again, my name is Nathan. Thank you so much for watching. This is Nice at Dice, and you enjoy the rest of your day.